All right. Due to some technological issues, most of us have turned off our cameras, so we unfortunately can't see each other, but we will quickly turn them on at the end, just so we can meet each other in a more natural way. If Professor Langa Khumalo could turn on his camera for a brief moment. Professor will be our speaker for today's webinar. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Shumela. Good morning.
Good morning. For our second webinar, I am delighted to be welcoming Professor Langa Khumalo, who is the Executive Director of the South African Center for Digital Language Resources, referred to as SADiLaR, at the Northwest University. Professor Khumalo holds a PhD in linguistics from the University of Oslo and an MPhil in linguistics from Cambridge University. And he is the former Director of Language Planning and Development at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Professor Langa Khumalo is currently the chair and coordinator of the African Union isiZulu Language Commission, and he is also the chair of the University of South Africa's Community of Practice for African Language Teaching and Learning, and he is also the current president of the African Association for Lexicography, AfriLex, as well as a board member of the scientific board of the Center for Advanced Studies of African Society at the University of Western Cape. Professor Langa Khumalo is an award-winning author in intelligent text processing and computational linguistics. He has been invited on numerous occasions to be a speaker and a keynote speaker at various local and international conferences and colloquia, and is also an expert in corpus linguistics and computational solutions for the African Academy of Languages, which is a secretariat of the African Union. He also sits as a member in numerous forums and societies, such as the Common Language Resources and Technology Infrastructure, which is a European research infrastructure for languages, resources, and technology. He is also a fellow of the Cambridge Commonwealth Society, a former language champion in the Oxford Global Languages Program for Oxford University Press. He is also a member of the SADC Indigenous Knowledge Systems Scientific Community of Practice. Thank you so much, Professor Khumalo, for joining us, and welcome.
Thank you very much, Shumelo, for that introduction, and good morning, colleagues. I am excited and honored to be addressing this linguistics network, and I hope that this presentation is going to be engaging and hopefully get a lot of feedback from you colleagues. I don't know, Shumelo, if you can see my slides.
Yes, we can see the slides. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, very quickly in this talk, I will briefly discuss the global context, i.e. the COVID-19 global pandemic, and then look at the 4 aspects of the paper, i.e. the isiZulu corpora, the human language technologies for African languages, digital humanities as a method for addressing the current crisis across the academy, and then zero in on language teaching in this context. The COVID-19 global pandemic, which primarily affects health, has had a telling effect on many sectors, including the higher education sector. The global crisis has resulted in many countries taking unusual measures, such as closing schools, colleges, universities, in a massive lockdown in order to stem the spread of the novel coronavirus. The higher education sector has been compelled to come up with responsive measures to address the disruption of the academic programs. Efforts are underway to migrate to online teaching, and some universities have successfully done that. On an hitherto untested and unprecedented scale, student assessments have provided a rare challenge, with some institutions opting to cancel them altogether. So a further challenge has been networked communication, which is not available to most students and even staff. And in cases where it is available, it is very poor, it is clearly exorbitant, and is disrupted by power interruptions. Other hidden challenges are the complexities of homeschooling, with some homes just not suitable for learning to take place privately. So the migration of teaching and learning to remote learning via online platforms presents a further challenge to the teaching of African languages. Most African languages have no digital presence. This means that they have no processed natural language data that is stored in a reusable format online. They are therefore, in this case, resource scarce. So the paucity of resources includes lack of exhaustive linguistic descriptions, the absence of large and specialized corpora, and machine-readable lexicons. As a result of this, the development of human language technologies and other computational solutions has been scarce for most African languages. Crucially, because of the generally diminished status and limited use of these languages, attraction of funding resources is also poor, and this has been reported by Bosch, Pretorius and Bosch, Kitt and Khumalo. This is notably the bane of most African languages, and it is my argument, therefore, that computational solutions and funding resources are an important precursor to the development of African languages. Computational tools in the current context of the fourth industrial revolution and big data analytics are important enablers in accelerating the introduction and use of African languages in the academy. The University of KwaZulu-Natal hence has made advances in the development of isiZulu as one of its 2 official languages. It is notable that isiZulu is the most popular South African language by first language speakers, with about 25% of the population of about 58 million as first language speakers of isiZulu. Since 2014, UKZN has developed the isiZulu national corpus so that it becomes the largest African language corpus. It currently has 31.7 million tokens, and it has also developed 2 other corpus typologies. And this is the English isiZulu parallel corpus, which currently has 32,467 sentences, and the isiZulu oral corpus, which has 130 hours, 35 minutes, and 57 seconds. These are commendable resources that are necessary if one was to embark on a process to intellectualize African languages, not just for the academy, but for use in other spaces such as commerce and trade. All these corpora are available as digital resources for language research and language teaching. We argue, therefore, that using these corpora, UKZN can teach isiZulu online in response to the COVID-19 education lockdown. There has been a growing scholarship of digital humanities that seeks to use digital humanities methods in looking at data and research in a novel and interesting way in the areas of humanities and social sciences. Digital humanities methods involve the use of novel computational methods, such as computer software and carefully processed and machine-readable data to solve research problems in the humanities and social sciences, or to challenge existing theoretical assumptions. In order to address the disruption that has been brought about as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, the imperative exists to transform pedagogies at our universities. This entails using technology to improve the student experience through digitizing content and using digital methodologies in teaching and learning. It is in this sense that the advancing scholarship of digital humanities comes to the fore. The scholarship of digital humanities promotes and advances digital research and teaching across all arts and humanities disciplines, using cutting-edge technologies and technological resources, providing scholars with new ways of looking at old problems while simultaneously advancing new knowledge and new pedagogies. So DH provides a bridge between the traditional practices of research and technology-driven research to scholars struggling the quintessential humanist approaches and those focusing on modern digital methodologies, tools, and frameworks. It is a growing scholarship in the humanities and social sciences that is spurred by advances in computing and digital spheres and providing new collaboration with engineering and computer science and other technosciences. African language corpora as digital resources therefore provide African linguists with an opportunity to teach African languages in this novel and technology-driven way. So now I'm going to try and focus on corpora in language teaching and how this resource that resides at UKZN can form part and parcel of the pedagogies that are available for lecturers and students alike. A corpus is a carefully designed and systematically collected natural language data from a judiciously selected variety of text types and sources following a particular set of principles, which constitutes a sample that statistically reflects the use of that particular language and is processed, stored in a reusable format in order to be accessed by means of computers. The size of a corpus and the source from which it is created depend on the intended purpose by those that are creating this resource. The isiZulu National Corpus that sits at UKZN is a language for general purpose type of corpus with 31.7 million running words of written text data. It is an organic monitor corpus with a sufficient balance in terms of text types and thematic content. And I noticed that I skipped the slide that actually shows the types of text that are included in the INC for short. So the isiZulu National Corpus, INC for short, is therefore a word-based open source resource. Corpora in general have been widely used in linguistics research and beyond. They are at the core of many human language technologies like spell checkers, machine learning, translators, and lexicons. For many developed languages, corpora are increasingly used to provide excellent facilities for teaching and learning. Further, since there is a connection between language and culture, by analyzing a corpus, much can be learned about the communities represented in a particular corpus. Specialized corpora have also been applied in disease surveillance and customer sentiment analysis in business. So corpus as a resource, therefore, forms an important resource in many spheres of our human activity. Corpora can be used at multiple levels in order to contribute to effective learning and teaching in first or additional language learning. corpora provide valuable information on the frequency of use of both grammatical or function words and content or lexical elements. Corpora are useful in providing additional information to intuition by providing evidence on attested use of language, and thus can influence the content and design of language modules positively. Corpora provide real natural language usage examples which are not immediately available to a language teacher who uses illustrative made-up examples that are based on intuition. Corpora can enhance language description, and language teaching moves away from introspection-based research, resulting in improved pedagogical grammars and more informed dictionaries. There are other reference studies that I am not going to highlight here. Studies by Daliat in 2012 that focused on Sesotho, Closer Home, and many other studies, notably Christina Murphy and others in the UK. But in order to access digital data that are stored in a computer, one needs a text analysis software program that can assist in querying the data. There are several software programs such as Sketch Engine, Wordsmith Tools, and Andconc. Sketch Engine, which has been developed by Lexical Computing since 2003, is the most advanced tool with corpus management functions and complex text analysis systems. The Wordsmith Tools, which was developed by Mike Scott in 1996 and is currently in its 7th version, is another very well used tool in this corpus linguistics area. It is an integrated suite of 3 main programs: the word list, the concord, and keyword functions. Andconc, on the other hand, which was developed by Lawrence Anthony in 2006, is a freeware multi-platform tool for carrying out corpus linguistics research and a data-driven learning. As a multi-platform tool, it can run on any computer with MS Windows, Macintosh, and Linux. So it is a much usable and ready tool that is free, unlike the other 2 that are proprietary. Because Andconc is a free software tool and can be used on different operating systems, it is ideal for language teaching, particularly in the South African context, and especially for the isiZulu online teaching and learning that we are advocating for here. Andconc contains 7 tools. The user can easily access them and navigate from one tool to the other, and you can see them on the left part of the slide, and they start with the concord on the top left to the keyword list on the far right. And these tools are very useful in navigating and for analyzing any corpus resource. These tools are useful in analyzing various word units, word in context, word clusters, words and their preferred grammatical or semantic collocations, most frequent and less frequent words, and so on. In this study, we sampled the INC in order to have a smaller sample corpus that we queried using Andconc in order to demonstrate that isiZulu corpus can be used through a freeware such as Andconc program in teaching and learning isiZulu at UKZN. So what was our sample size? Our sample size was 110,000 running words that were generated from 5 written texts that we sampled, collected, and queried. In figure 1 is a screenshot showing a word list generating using the Andconc software. it shows the most frequent words generated from the sample corpus. So you will notice that in Fig 1, it flows from the most frequent word to the least frequent in a descending order. So your X in number 1 would be your most frequent word with 5,903 occurrences in this sample corpus. And your number 17 in the screen will have 315 occurrences, and it's kahle. Rank stands for the number the word occupies in the list of the words that are in the word list. So your number 1, 2, 3, 50, up to 17 in the screenshot shows how the words are ranked in terms of their frequency. Freq is the number of times a word occurs in the corpus. So for instance, the X occurs 5,903 times in this sample corpus of about 110,000 tokens. And actually, if you look closely to the window, you can actually see the exact number of tokens that were queried in this sample corpus. It is exactly 111,833,000 words that were queried in this sample corpus. The 10 most frequent words in the sample corpus of this INC are uguti as number 2 there, nje, ngoba, uma, ukuba, khona, lapho, ge, and wati. Those are the top 10, and wati is number 10, as you can see there, with 437 frequencies in this sample corpus. All these words are function or grammatical words belonging to a closed word class. These closed word sets are concords, connectives, numerals, pronouns, etc. Studies in corpus linguistics show that frequency lists are commonly dominated by function words. However, this information is not intuitively available to a language learner, hence the importance of a corpus in language learning. Following this corpus evidence, therefore, the first task would typically be to identify closed word classes in isiZulu, then put them in the words in the frequency list, as you saw the frequency list in Fig 1, and then list them according to their correct word classes. Then if you want a more nuanced search, then you click on the concordancer that is going to, by just isolating one word like uguti, you click on it on the concordancer, and it will show you that this function word has a typical context in the corpus in which it is normally used, as you can see in example 1 on the right side of the slide. This provides new insights to the learners as they see various contexts in which the word is used in natural language. The X that I made reference to in the frequency list as the top ranked element in the corpus is quite notable, but it has a very simple explanation. X is the number of times that numbers have been counted in the corpus. And again, using this corpus freeware as a concordancy search for more context, this will illuminate your query, as you can see in example 2, that in every context where there is a number before or after the value X, it is therefore marked using this label. So the concordancer in example 1, in both example 1 and 2 actually, can be exported to a Word document, and you can extract these, and in a presentation such as these, you can then use these examples in the context of your discussion. So again, this is enabled by the functionalities that are available in this freeware anti-conc program. So in some programs, or program developers forget that when you're querying a corpus, you query it in order to take the evidence that as a result of this query and present it elsewhere. And you oftentimes you can't extract the evidence that you require in order to use it in other programs where you want to present your result or your scientific findings. And AntConc gives you that functionality to be able to export whatever your examples have shown in your query to a Word document for presentation of further results. The word list tool allows one to export the word list into a Word document. Again, it's a function of the AntConc program. It is also possible to export the entire word list without the limitation of the screen, as shown in Fig 1 and also in Table 2 in this slide. And it shows the 20 most frequent words in that particular slide. While most of the words in Table 2 are still function words, the word in 19, ranked in 19, which occurs 300 times in the corpus, and it's ujeke, is a content word. Unlike grammatical words, whose function is structural, content words refer to word units that carry a semantic value or semantic content, which contributes to the meaning of a sentence they occur in. Not that function words do not have this, but content words do come up with a semantic content. Nouns and verbs are the main examples of these types of content words. It is possible in a corpus, therefore, to further isolate content words from function words. This again can be a linguistic exercise that students can do computationally. And this is by way of annotating their corpus before they can subject it to a query such as this one. And in that way, the query can be made more faster and it can be made more pointed. Table 3 shows the 10 most frequent content words in the sample of the INC that we queried. The content words are of interest to linguists and lexicographers alike. And lexicographers deal with lexicons, dictionaries, and their meaning. So linguists study their morphology, their morphosyntax, and their semantics, while lexicographers are interested in them because content words are the words that make up dictionaries. Since lexicography is the science of dictionary making, the frequency, concordancy, and collocation of content words are of scientific interest to a lexicographer. This computational approach to language study and language analysis makes the work of a linguist and that of a lexicographer more efficient and error-free, and therefore faster than it would be were it done manually through human effort. For example 1 of the crucial decisions, a lexicographer has to make a dictionary word include, what word to include, what word to exclude in a particular dictionary. The frequency is an excellent function for a lexicographer. Otherwise, that exercise is left again to human judgment. So a frequency list would actually show you that the speech community that is represented in that particular corpus use these words as the most frequent and therefore are typically the words that the dictionary should reflect. So with the availability of online resources such as AntConc, Summers posits that all aspects of lexicography are influenced by frequency. And there is a famous quotation in lexicography for those of us who have worked in lexicography by Kierkegaard that the more common it is, the more important it is to know. So you have to know the most frequent words in any lexicon or any list of words, because it shows you that there is something about those words that makes them most frequent. And of course, the opposite is also true. The less frequent words do tell a story of their own in lexicography. So content words provide a whole gamut of both linguistic and cultural information that is contained in a language. While the corpus examples while corpus enables one to isolate verbs and nouns, as shown in Table 4 and Table 5 in this slide, Table 4 is a list of 12 most frequent verbs in the sample INC. The first 6 most frequent verbs in this list are a variant of the main verb T, to say. So you will notice in number 10, number 13, number 7, T1, wati, eti, ati, bati, uti, yati. So they actually show the various conjugation of that stem T. And those all elements that conjugate this monosyllabic verb are inflections that provide very interesting lessons in inflectional morphology and verb conjugation in isiZulu. So again, in a language class or linguistic class, this becomes an interesting element to focus on in morphology. The nouns in Table 5 also provide interesting insights. A noun is made up typically of 2 formatives: the prefix, which is also a very complex structure in itself, and a stem. And again, a stem also has interesting morphosyntactic insights. This is an interesting aspect of the morphology of the nouns in isiZulu. While each noun in isiZulu is allocated a specific noun class, there are some nouns that are difficult to classify, as is observed in Kit and Khumalo, which makes it an interesting linguistic unit of study. The isiZulu noun class is a distinct pairing of singular and plural nominal forms. And again, there are interesting examples of nouns that do not seem to take a singular form. And because of the agglutinating nature of isiZulu, coupled with this conjugating writing system, which glues together elements of an isiZulu word, as a result, a number of noun classes and their prefixes in isiZulu are phonologically conditioned, and yet others are homographs. There are interesting studies that seek to explicate the generation of and semantic motivation for the various noun class assignments, not just in isiZulu, but in Bantu studies. It is our argument that to access massive corpus data and access it in such a very easy, swift way, this can lead to new insights in this area. It is also interesting that the focus on the noun covers areas such as phonology, morphology, and semantics. Corpus studies also provide for an extended focus. And I want to show in Table 5 that the noun inkosi, the king, izinkomo, cattle, and amabuto, the warriors, are ranked 23, 57, and 70 in the frequency list in the farmost table on the slide. These words are all in the top 100 most frequent words in this sample corpus. Their frequency would be much more higher, I presume, in the entire 31.7 million word corpus. This suggests that inkosi the king, occupies a very important seat in the organization of the Zulu people. And that means their social organization. The high frequency of izinkomo also suggests that they must have a significant cultural influence in the Zulu social organization. The word Amabuto makes reference to the history of the Zulu people when armies were organized in terms of Amabuto warriors. In order to study these highly frequent words further and deeper, the concordancy tool provides more context, and the student delves into a deeper sociocultural worldview using evidence that is immediately available by means of electronic corpus. So the use of a corpus in a language for language teaching clearly extends beyond language structure and second language learning into interesting sociocultural and historical topics. So the corpus-based approach is also interesting for both linguists and lexicographers in the areas of semantics and sense disambiguation, respectively. In the area of semantics, homographs present interesting challenges, particularly for second language learners when words are spelled the same way but have different meanings. So in table 6, we have an example of a homograph in isiZulu, inyanga. The word inyanga is ranked just outside the top 200 most frequent words in this sample corpus. So it's 201 according to that table 6. A concordancy search done by clicking on the word inyanga produces concordancy lines that are shown in example 3. So the dominant senses as shown in the concordancy lines 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and line 8 has inyanga as a traditional doctor or traditional healer. In line 9, inyanga refers to the month, and in line 10, inyanga refers to the moon. In lexicography, such data provides usage examples that are typical in natural language, because these examples are typically how the language speakers or authors in the language are using the language. It is also very useful in disambiguating various senses, as shown in these 3 sets. One set referring to a traditional doctor or healer, the other referring to a month, and yet other referring to a moon. So it's a very convenient way of disambiguating various senses of these word types. This is important to a lexicographer, as meaning reference is an intrinsic part of a dictionary. So in conclusion, the global lockdown of education institutions as a result of coronavirus pandemic has forced many institutions to rethink the mode of delivering their course offerings. This entails preparing pedagogical materials to be made available in a structured way and available on an online platform that is accessible in digital forms. The challenge that this mode of delivery poses is that in the teaching of African languages, as most African languages are under-resourced, which means they do not have resources online that are immediately available for learners such as corpora, spell checkers, morphological and grammatical analyzers. However, we have attempted to show that in this study, UKZN has made progress in developing isiZulu, which has put it in a good position to offer isiZulu online. So the INC is a very important resource that can be used in the teaching and learning of isiZulu via the digital mode of delivery, using software that is already free and available. So using novel digital humanities approaches that infuse computational approaches in the teaching of courses in humanities and social sciences, it can be shown that teaching of isiZulu, phonology, morphology, morphosyntax, and semantics can be done online using the EndConc freeware and open source INC. So we have shown that the corpus approach can extend the learning and teaching of isiZulu to lexicography and lexicographic practice, socio-cultural and historical aspects of the language. I thank you. Ngiyabonga kakhulu.
Thank you so much, Professor Khumalo, for that wonderful presentation on necessary work, especially during this particular time. I would like to open the floor now to any questions or comments and thoughts that you would like to share. Oh, and I can see you are receiving a lot of round of applause from the participants. Yes, I think no comments, no questions. I think that was well presented with clear points from everyone.
Chair, can I go first?
Oh, thank you, Steve. You can go ahead.
Yes. Thank you, Professor Khumalo, for a brilliant presentation. I was actually looking forward to it, and unfortunately this morning I had some connection problem with my internet, so I joined about almost 10 minutes late, so I kind of missed the first part. But I like the rest of the presentation. It was just brilliant. I only have one question, like on the software that you showed to share. You didn't mention one, but
Steve, I can't hear you anymore. I'm not sure if other people can still hear you.
I can hear him just fine.
Still hear him.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was saying that in Prof Khumalo, in the that list of software that you showed, you didn't show one that I personally use, and I don't know whether SADiLaR doesn't use it or that SADiLaR doesn't recommend it, but Tronelex, that was developed by a private company, including Professor Gilles Maurice Descrefer.
Yes, I didn't show that one. It's a very useful software, and I've used it in it's especially dictionary software, and it's also very user friendly. But again, of course, in this world of computational linguistics and computational tools development, you are spoiled for choice. But the choice of ANCONC is inspired by one major factor. It is a free software. And so therefore, it would be easily available for the classroom, where students don't have to pay anything to use a software program, and also the lecturer as well can easily download the software and they have it on their machine and use it in a teaching and learning environment. The other software programs, their disadvantage typically is that you have to pay for them, and students, they are struggling already with fees, and to make them pay for a learning tool would become another complexity that I don't think in the context of COVID-19 you want to add. So that's true, Steve. We do have Tronelex grown right here in South Africa, but unfortunately it's not a free software tool.
Thank you.
Prof. I see there's a question in the comments section, and Christine, I can also see your hand up. Can I just quickly read the question in the comment section and then you can go ahead after that?
Sure.
This question is from Motsei A. Thanks, Prof. Very insightful presentation. I think Sesotho can learn more from isiZulu. How can other aspects of language, such as idioms and riddles be taught on DH model?
So the DH model is a very I think I should actually invite you to, we are rolling out what is called an escalator program at SADiLaR. And I really would invite you to go to SADiLaR website and just write escalator. There is a dedicated page or pages of the escalator program that we would really want for the academy to join, because we are trying to reskill, upskill the people that are working in DH and computational and natural language processing spaces, so that they can acquire these digital techniques in doing research and or in teaching using these computational resources. So yes, you can actually teach anything using DH model. It depends on whether you're teaching this from a corpus, a general corpus, or whether you're teaching this from a specialized corpus, i.e. you have a collection of your idioms and wriggles, and you're teaching from that particular corpus resource. And you can use a plethora of these computational approaches to teach these aspects. And there are many. I mean, I would really also invite you to join our carpentries workshops that we always roll out or dole out, so that we can, in the academy, especially in the humanities and social sciences, begin to use some of these technologies that really actually make our work easier, make our work not more scientific, because of course we're using scientific frameworks to do our work even currently, but it makes it easy because it's faster in processing your data, it's error-free. That means you're not having to edit your data sets that often, and you can actually extract and present it in a very novel way. So depending on whether you want to create an LSP corpus for your idioms and riddles, and you want to use stylos, you want to use stylometrics, you want to use any of the software that are available, it is a very interesting way of looking at your data. And sometimes you're looking at the data that you have had for years, but you've been using it, looking at it through particular prisms. But when you use these types of computational tools, you begin to see certain things that your old frameworks or your eyes missed in looking at that type of data. So yeah, I really, let me just quickly see if I can actually put the escalator URL on the chat box, while I can take other comments or questions, Chair.
All right, thank you so much, Prof. Dr. Riedel, you can go ahead with your question or comment.
Thank you. So I was wondering if you wanted to speak to what our students need to know to be able to make use of these kinds of tools. So I think for this presentation, mostly you focused on what we as instructors should understand about these kinds of things. But so in my own experience teaching Swahili, for example, my students often didn't know the difference between a verb and a noun, or maybe they did know it on some level, but they would get confused. And then sometimes if they were writing they were supposed to write in Kiswahili, and they would use the noun for a cook or a chef or something instead of the verb for cook. And so I was wondering what kind of tools you think students need to be ready to work with corpus type tools in their language learning classroom or activities.
Thank you, Christina, for that question. A bit difficult if you're talking about students that are working outside our area of specialization, i.e. linguistics. Because in linguistics, we're expecting that they do have grammars or grammar tools already, or some knowledge of grammar. But again, that's the challenge of most African languages. They don't have these grammars, okay? But let's assume that they don't know the distinction between a verb and a noun and other categories. So if you present them with a corpus, let's say it's a raw corpus again, because there's a corpora that are easy to collect, and you do a word list. And you typically say, take this word. Do you know what this word means? Or do you know this word? Take it into a concordancer. What does the concordancy say? So they can typically see that the keyword is in context, it is isolated, and it has a color that is different from other strings before and after it. And then ask them, what is it that you see? What is the behavior of this word in concordance line 1, in concordance line 2, using their intuitions to bring to bear on the data sets that are before them. And then if you typically want to show them that this is a verb and you are a teacher, this is a verb, but this is a noun, but you're not telling them that. You just look at the behavior of this word. What does it do? What is the behavior of this word? What is the context of this word? What are the collocates? What are the typical words that go along with this word? Take away the context. What do you see? Typically, the students will begin to see that words have an intrinsic meaning, which means they do choose the company of words that they take in a sentence. And then you begin to teach them how, from a word to a phrase to a sentence, words choose their typical collocates. And then you go to semantics. Okay, so what does this word mean? So if it means this, does it mean that this word carries this function, a particular grammatical function? If it means this, does it mean that it carries a different type of grammatical function? So you can actually use corpus-based raw data using a software such as this freeware to begin to make students think more about the data sets that are before them, instead of imbibing or taking instruction from the teacher that, oh, this is a verb. And they are splitting hairs on how come does this become a verb? Because it's a label, and the word has come and has come with a label. Just bring the words without any labels and make them attach labels to these words using these strategies. The other simple way of doing it, which is very lazy for students, would be to work with corpora that are annotated. But in that sense, they're not learning anything. It's like going into a textbook again, because everything is labeled for them. All they need to do is to call out verbs, to call out certain inflectional verbs, to call out certain derivational verbs, because everything is marked up for them. But you can actually give them just a quick disclaimer, some of the markups can be imposed and taken away from a data set. So if you have those types of markup, they are very good for language teaching, because you can actually give them as raw, a data set, and then mark it up, and then say, compare your markups with the marked up corpus, and then they see how they fared. But if you're dealing with a raw corpus, it's very difficult. Again, it's like typically having a maths textbook that has answers at the back, and a maths textbook that doesn't have answers at the back. So they have to make up the answers and then present themselves to the teacher to tell them that they're right or wrong. But when it's a markup annotate corpus that can be taken out and imposed on a data set, then they know that I can give it a shot and impose the markups and see how badly or how well I did it. So these are very interesting ways of teaching using a raw corpus, students that have very little or basic knowledge of what a noun, and when I say basic, is your mother tongue intuition that you bring to the classroom. Yeah, that's my reaction to that, Christine. But what we are trying to do again is to introduce students to computation early, let's say at undergraduate level. So at Northwest University, working with the CTEX node at SADiLaR, we are introducing a module called, sorry, not a module, a program called Bachelor of Language Technology. In this program, we are teaching language students natural language processing, you know, your elementary introduction to Python, how to manipulate a small set of data, how to manipulate certain strings of data sets, etc., and compute them, provide computational solutions to language problems. So we are hoping that at the end of the first tranche of our students, this program is having its first intake in January of 2022. Hopefully, after the next 3 years, we will have our first set of computational linguists that come from languages. Not somebody, you know, who is now bored with programming in computer science or computer engineering, struggling language and linguistics because they are being fascinated by data sets that we produce on a day-to-day basis. But we want linguists to actually, you know, acquire computational skills so that we can enrich our area of study or specialization in a different way. We're not saying computational linguists shouldn't come from the quintessential engineering background, but we're saying we could profit more because you already are studying or have studied language and you are extending your skills into this computational field, and that way, you know, you can do many things than a computational linguist, a quintessential computational scientist do. Usually they want to work with a linguist as a, what do they call it, a junior partner. You know, you just certify that these sentences are grammatical, that these phrases are acceptable, that, you know, you're not actually doing any computing yourself. You're just providing them with the yes or no in their data sets. And that's not much learning. You're enabling their work instead of actually doing and inspiring new work in your area. So I think we really need to market the language technology program that is starting next year here at Northwest, so that our typically language inclined students can begin to be trained in computational studies.
Thank you, Prof. Are there any other questions or comments? You can go ahead, Hannah.
Thanks very much. Thank you very much for the talk. It was fantastic, and yeah, lots of interesting topics and sort of connections there. I had a question that kind of came out from when you were talking about the frequency kind of discussion, and this is perhaps an issue for this kind of work, you know, kind of corpus work more broadly. But are there some challenges, problems associated with this kind of approach where you look at, you know, this is the word that is most frequent in our corpus, this is what occurs, you know, this is more important, quote unquote, than other words. And I'm thinking particularly in terms of written form versus perhaps, you know, spoken language, day-to-day use, different genres, also interested in variation. So are there certain forms that people are more likely to write, but then when they're talking, they would use other forms? I just wondered if you could sort of comment, or if you have any thoughts on that from a kind of, yeah, corpus kind of perspective.
Thanks, Hannah, for that question. Indeed, frequency does not necessarily mean important. It just means that you must be aware that this word is used more frequently. And the good thing about most of these computer softwares is that you can actually drill down to the source of that word. So let's say, and typically in spoken language, you will find a lot of, you know, not so standard use of words. And if you're wondering why this word used in a maybe colloquial sense is the most frequent in this corpus, you can actually go to the context in which that word, so that data set was extracted or was recorded, and then you can tell, oh, okay, so in football they will typically use this word for a particular player, or in sport in general, they would typically use this, and therefore this is why this word is so frequent. And of course, in writing discourses, or in written discourses, again, the use of the language is different because it's more toned down, structured, formal, you know, and again, there is a lot of editing out of what we will typically represent in spoken form. So that's why most corpora aspire to be balanced. So they will typically want to have a speech corpus and a healthy dose of written data so that this balance is achieved. And John Sinclair used to be very finicky about a balanced corpus. And a balanced corpus would typically not just be between speech and written text, would also look at the themes. Are they a range enough to cover all the things that are humanly possible in any speech community, etc. So do you have modern, young, youthful speakers represented in your corpus? Do you have old storytellers in your corpus? Do you have technology reports? Do you have again academic reports, etc., to bring out this balance in your corpus? So the good thing, just to go back to the original point, it's of course high frequency does not mean most important. It just means this is interesting. Just check it out. And check out its significance. If it's a linguistic significance, check out its linguistic significance. And if it's for instance, in most modern corpora now, you see a lot of translanguaging. So the sentences don't end, that don't begin in isiZulu and end in isiZulu without seeing typically your English and or some Afrikaans words that have isiZulu words that have a link to Afrikaans, etc. And it will take somebody who is interested in those inflections in language to actually drill down and check what is the context of this. And some would dismiss it as quickly as, no, this corpus is full of noise. It has a lot of foreign and or borrowed words that don't typically represent isiZulu as spoken, say, in KZN. But what is isiZulu? So isiZulu, is isiZulu a regional language that is, spoken in a confined village, or it is an organic language that is growing and sharing and borrowing and taking in from all the other languages that it lives with or that it has historically had contact with, etc. So, and those are linguistic debates that come to the fore when you're looking closely at the corpus data that is presented before you. So the frequency can be problematic in that sense, therefore, when you're looking at frequency as instructive, instead of looking at frequency as, a prime, a highlighter. Okay, check this out. Is it interesting? What is the context, etc., etc. So I hope I addressed that, Hannah.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much. That's really helpful and interesting.
Thank you so much, Prof. Would anyone else like to add a comment or a question?
So, Chair, if I can say more, I know that I spoke about the isiZulu National Corpus, which is one of the three corpus typologies that are at UKZN. But the other two are also of interest, and of course they require a different or new type of presentation or paper, because in a parallel corpus is very useful for any language for that matter, because once you have that parallel corpus, you can use that parallel corpus to develop all sorts of interesting technologies. So you're using data to enable you to create a technology. And why isiZulu actually went ahead and brought in a third type, the oral corpus. What they are busy doing, or what the plan was to map speech data, i.e. your oral text, if it's a file, with a transcribed written text, which is linked to the INC, the general corpus, and begin to map what oral speech reflects as a text speech, and how it can be analyzed against a more general corpus such as the INC. And further, to make it possible to have a speech to text and text to speech technology generated. And between the parallel corpus of one source language to the target language, to begin to create translation systems that are automated. So if you, for instance, if you have enough text between the two languages, you can begin to write a software program that can begin to predict the output and input between the two languages. And then we can begin to have environments where you can actually automate the translation systems. So it is really a very handy way of developing further tools for the language. And that's why we say, in our palace, data is the new currency. You can do so much with data, and therefore data is precious. So whatever linguistic data that you're working on, please do share it, especially with SADiLaR, because any data is precious. And we have various frameworks. We have MOUs that we can sign so that we can access that data. If you want that data to be restricted, we can actually follow those type of licenses. But as long as that data is available, that data that you're generating is available, that data is priceless, because it is something can be developed, a technology can be developed from that particular data set. So that's very important.
No, that's definitely true. And speaking of the value of data, there's a question in the chat box from Demagazo asking, Prof, is the data from UKZN an open source for research use?
Yes, I have. Okay, so another disclaimer. I was primarily driving the development of all these data sets at UKZN. There are still limitations to access those data sets, but I am in discussions with those data sets to be made available in the first instance to SADiLaR, because it is an infrastructure that has the capacity to make this data available to other researchers, academics, or other institutions. And we do have a very good repository where we can make it really available, and the capacity. Again, UKZN is failing on capacity. If you're trying to query the INC from their server, it can take you days on end to query a simple thing. So they don't have the capacity for a size of corpus that they have, which is something that can be quickly resolved from an infrastructure that is at SADiLaR. So to answer Demagazo directly, I'm in talks with UKZN to have that data migrated to us so that it can be shared much more easily. We are going to discuss the licenses under which they want to share that data, but we really are keen to get that data so that the research community can have access to that resource. It's a very important resource.
All right. Thank you so much, Prof. Oh, there is a question from Andrew. You can go ahead.
Thanks. I just wanted to say, just very quickly, and comment to the last thing that Prof Khumalo said, that sounds very encouraging to me, that they are trying to get increased capacity, but behind those resources, and make them more widely accessible. I think that's really good.
Thanks,
that was
Andy.
all.
Thank you, Andy, and good to see you.
Likewise. Very good.
Everybody here is called by first name, and I'm the only one who is not being called by first name. And I have my name up there. Actually, I had to write it in full because I thought everybody was going to call me by my first name. At least Hannah, I think Hannah tried. Yes, Steve.
Apologies. I think from reading the biography and doing the introduction, it kept it very formal, and then I stuck to keeping it very formal throughout.
But I think this is a great point to move on to the informal part. So yeah. Thank you so much. So we did this last time, and we thought this would be a nice idea to steal from our colleagues in Japan, actually, to have an optional chat session for people after the formal talk. So then people who need to leave can leave, and then other people can just chat a little bit like one would do over coffee normally, or maybe even with coffee if you have some ready, before we wrap up.
I do have a cup of my tea, Christina. I don't do coffee.
Perfect. Tea is also fine.
Although I lived in Scandinavia and they had a lot of coffee down there.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
Very strong stuff.
Very strong. I would drink it after 10 and I wouldn't sleep, So I ended up saying, okay, I can drink it until 9 o'clock. After 10, please, sorry. I'll try next morning.
Yeah, no, it's good to be strict on these things if you want to get some sleep.
True.
True. And speaking of just having a chat, I think one thing this presentation has sort of brought to my mind is the issue of access, and access not only just to the data, but access for our students, considering how this would be the ideal time now to think more about teaching online and expanding what it means to teach online, and getting students to sort of like get their hands dirty and work with the corpus. But there's just always that issue of students with whether it's data or the technology, or even understanding or spending time understanding how the different softwares work. There's just always that continuous issue of access in South Africa and maybe other parts of the world.
That is so true. Because, the assumption is, okay, let's migrate online, and everybody has the facility to be working from online. And which is why at SADiLaR, we are trying to develop technologies that are mobile compatible, because the outlay of cell phones is really much better than the outlay of computer and laptop and other resources. So almost everybody, or every household in the urban setup has one or two cell phone handsets. But in the more remote areas, you might find one in a family has such kind of a handset. So if our technology was made with that in mind, i.e., where is your technology distributed, it would be much more helpful, because you don't want to develop a technology that would be constrained by accessibility. As you rightly point out. So we're trying to develop technologies that are mobile compatible, so that almost as many people can access those technologies as possible. But the assumption that everybody has access to everything equally is such a misplaced assumption. And as is the case with what is happening in schools and universities, where we are assuming that everyone in their home, their situation is the same and they can study at home. In some homes, it is totally impossible to sit in a corner and study and have a lecture. And yet we are assuming that learning and teaching is happening in this context of lockdown. It's such an important point. I think it needs to be highlighted.
Yeah,
right, and also students and others having the skills to use all these tools, right? I mean, that's also not equally distributed. So you need data and a conducive environment and tools, but you also need to know how to use them, of course.
An important point, because at UKZN, while I was still at UKZN, we noticed that when we first distributed laptops to students, not many students knew how to log into a laptop. They had to be taught. The IC department ended up having a program to train the students to use this laptop that was made available for free. So that's so true as well, that the use of these technologies also is an impediment.
Yeah, and we get this at all different levels. So in my language documentation course that I'm teaching right now, the students really struggle to install ELAN, and I'm not quite sure why, but they somehow couldn't get it to work. And then, yeah, it was quite difficult to get support for them. So our ICT somehow also didn't manage to support them. So I mean, like at different entry points, you run into troubles with technology access, right? In terms of user skills and so on.
Okay, Christina and colleagues, I must go now, but thank you very much for affording me this opportunity to talk to the network. And I hope that this network will grow and that we are going to continue having this active network into the future. Thank you so much, colleagues.
Thank you very much. And thanks everyone who joined us today.
Yes, thank you so much. And the network will be in touch about when we will have our next seminar talk. Yeah, thank you.
It's the 22nd of October, and it's going to be Rose Letsolo Tafila. But we will send an email with login details and an abstract. So look out for that, please.
Yes, thank you. Have a wonderful Friday afternoon/day.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Out and for all. Oh no. Stop recording.